And we haven't always done enough to help our workers adapt to a changing world. Now, there's no question that as we compete in the global marketplace, we've got to look out for our workers. But to look out for our workers, we've got to be able to compete in the global marketplace. It's never been as important an opportunity for America as it is right now. In a time when millions of Americans are out of work, boosting our exports is a short-term imperative. Our exports support millions of American jobs. You know this well. In 2008, we exported more than $1 trillion of manufactured goods, supporting more than 1 in 5 manufacturing jobs. And those jobs, by the way, pay about 15% more than average. We led the world in service exports, which support 2.8 million jobs. We exported nearly $100 billion in agricultural goods. And every $1 billion increase in exports supports more than 6,000 additional jobs. So it's critical in the short term, but it's also critical for our long-term prosperity. 95% of the world's customers and the world's fastest-growing markets are outside our borders. We need to compete for those customers because other nations are competing for them. They're investing in the skills and education of their people. They're investing in the high-demand industries of the future. They've benefited from American consumers. They've made themselves into export-based economies and positioned themselves for the jobs of the future. They're pursuing trade agreements with growing markets. And those agreements would give their companies access to those markets and put our workers and businesses at a disadvantage. So if we stand on the sidelines while they go after those customers, we'll lose out on the chance to create the good jobs our workers need right here at home. That's why standing on the sidelines is not what we intend to do. We need to remind ourselves we still have the most innovative economy in the world. We still have the most productive workers in the world. We have the finest universities in the world. We have the most dynamic and competitive markets in the world. We remain the #1 exporter of goods and services in the world. So we've got a terrific foundation to build on. But we can't be satisfied with being #1 right now. We shouldn't assume that our leadership is guaranteed. When other markets are growing and other nations are competing, we've got to get even better. We need to secure our companies a level playing field. We need to guarantee American workers a fair shake. In other words, we need to up our game. And that's why, for the first time, the United States of America is launching a single, comprehensive strategy to promote American exports. It's called the National Export Initiative, and it's an ambitious effort to marshal the full resources of the United States government behind American businesses that sell their goods and services abroad. This morning, I signed an executive order instructing the federal government to use every available federal resource in support of that mission. That order has created an export promotion cabinet made up of the Secretaries of State, Treasury, Agriculture, Commerce, and Labor, along with our USTR, our Small Business Administrator, the Export-Import Bank President, and other senior U.S. officials whose work impacts exports. That cabinet will convene its first meeting next month. I've also relaunched the President's Export Council, the principal national advisory committee on international trade. And I named Jim McCurney, the President and CEO of Boeing, as its chair, with Ursula Burns, the CEO of Xerox, as vice chair, and I look forward to their recommendations. Let me talk a little bit about what the National Export Initiative will do. First, we will substantially increase access to trade financing for businesses that want to export their goods, but just need a boost, especially small businesses and medium-sized businesses. Some of the biggest factors limiting a firm's decisions to export are the high upfront costs of establishing a foothold in a new market and the ability of the customers in that market to finance the purchase of their products. So during the financial crisis, as trade finance dried up, the Export-Import Bank lived up to its mission and stepped up to fill the void. In fiscal year 2009, as part of a broader effort of G20 nations to mobilize trade financing worldwide, this institution authorized $21 billion in loans in support of American exports. That's an increase of nearly 50% over the previous year. So I applaud Fred's efforts to increase that pace with the authorization of about $10 billion more in the first quarter of this year alone. And under the National Export Initiative, we'll continue to increase the amount of trade financing EXIM offers, including a new $2 billion per year effort to increase support for our small and medium-sized businesses. But another obstacle our exporters face is that the federal government, frankly, just hasn't done a good enough job advocating for them abroad, at least compared to the advocacy that other countries are engaging in. And that's why, as the second part of the National Export Initiative, the United States of America will go to bat for our businesses and our workers. As an example, last week I signed the Travel Promotion Act, a law that will establish active promotion and marketing efforts to encourage foreign visitors to come visit the most dynamic cities, the most entertaining destinations, and the most beautiful natural resources in the world. Well, that same principle applies for all of our businesses. We've got some of the most innovative companies in the world, and we should be advocating on their behalf to boost local economies and create jobs here. This is an effort I will personally lead as president. Next week, I'll take my second trip to the Asia Pacific, a region that will be fundamental to America's ability to create jobs and to thrive in the 21st century. We can't be on the sidelines. We have to lead, and our engagement has to extend to governments and businesses and peoples across the Pacific. So while I'm there, I'll visit Indonesia and Australia, two vibrant economies and democracies that will be critical partners for the United States. And in both countries, I'll highlight the role that American businesses play there and underscore how strong economic partnerships can create jobs on both sides of the Pacific while advancing both regional and global prosperity. Going forward, I will be a strong and steady advocate for our workers and our companies abroad. And this effort will extend throughout my administration. Secretary Locke is issuing guidance to all senior government officials who have foreign counterparts on how they can best promote our exports. Secretary Clinton is mobilizing a commercial diplomacy strategy, directing every one of our embassies to create a senior visitors business liaison who will manage our export advocacy efforts locally. And when our ambassadors return stateside, we'll ask them to travel the United States to discuss export opportunities in their countries of assignment. We're also announcing more than 40 trade and reverse trade missions that are scheduled for this year. The Department of Commerce, for example, has sent a trade mission to India this week. Secretary Vilsack is off to Japan on April 15th. So advocacy is going to be critical. Third, we'll unleash a battery of comprehensive and coordinated efforts to promote new markets and new opportunities for American exporters. Many businesses want to export their products, but just don't have the resources required to identify new markets or set up shop overseas, and that's where we can help. We'll bring together the EXIM Bank, the SBA, the Departments of Commerce and Agriculture, and the Trade Development Agency to set up one-stop shops across the country and in our 250 embassies and consulates abroad to help American businesses gain a foothold in the fastest-growing markets with the most demand. And we'll provide a comprehensive toolkit of services, from financing to counseling to promotion, to help potential exporters grow and expand. We'll create public-private partnerships to help firms break into new markets with the help of those who have been there, shipping and supply chain companies, for example.